What's going on YouTube? Ryos here, and today I wanted to give you guys an inside look on how I made a Christmas pop song.
You're all I want this Christmas. You're all I'm wishing for.
So you just heard 21 Christmases by Allisa Rose, my girlfriend, and today we're going to dive into the project a little bit and talk about some of the elements and just kind of take a look overall behind the scenes of the record. So quickly before we get started, I just wanted to let you guys know I just dropped my last release of 2019. It's called Emotions. It came out on Proximity, and I'm super proud of this one. I hope you guys can take a second and go check it out. It's a little bit of a slower record than I usually do, but nonetheless, it's still me, it's still Ryos, and I'm really proud of it. So go check it out if you haven't already. I really appreciate it. But let's dive into the project of Allisa Rose's 21 Christmases. So the way this record came about is Allisa really wanted to make a Christmas song, and we've been talking about it, throwing around the idea, and I'm like, yeah babe, like I'll produce it for you, just gotta get a Christmas song. So our really good friend Drew came through. He's an amazing songwriter. He makes music under Blaine. We did that song Alone that I released in October under Revealed. He's a singer on it and he wrote it. Great singer-songwriter, but he wrote us 21 Christmases. So he sent us a demo that sounded like this. So after me and Liz heard that, we were both blown away and we wanted to get to work ASAP. And the way everything panned out, we basically only had 4 or 5 days to like make the record from start to finish. So I had to record her, produce it, she had to sing it, I had to mix and master it. So a lot went into it in 4 or 5 days, but nonetheless, we're super proud of how it came out, and shout out to everybody that's been listening to it. We really do appreciate it. But anyway, so when it was time to start the production, I thought to myself, I wanted it to sound, traditional and Christmassy, but also at the same time have a sort of modern touch and, make it pop, make it 2019-esque. So starting off, we have the main guitar that pretty much carries throughout the whole song. And something pretty interesting that I did here is I kind of split up the signal into 2 different parts. So a high and low, which basically means bright and dark. This first guitar, which is the main guitar, this is the characteristic guitar. I processed it with some RC20 to give it some character. Waves guitar amp to give it a little bit more of a real feel. Did some dynamic EQing. I have a reverb and I have another EQ. Now this project that I'm showing you guys is not the final mix and master. Usually what I do is when I'm done producing it, I'll stem it out and then mix and master it in a new project. But I do like to mix along the way, and this guitar in the context of the mix was just super thin. And an easy solution was just to split up the signal and have a low one or a darker version. And it happened to be that this darker version is just the original sound with no processing. But it gave it that thickness that it was missing. So combined, it sounds like this. And then underneath that, I wanted to add another bed of sound, because even though I was making a Christmas pop song for Liz, I do want to infuse my sort of, my own characteristics, or my own taste, I should say. I'm a big fan of dreamy, atmospheric sort of songs. And, with pop, it's sort of the opposite, but at the same time, again, I wanted to get that sort of balance. So I added this bed of analog chords that just give it a little bit of movement and a little bit more of a vibe, for lack of a better word. Now after that, I wanted to add a little bit more liveliness or authenticity to this track. It felt a little bit too digital, and a cool way to do that is through textures. So I added this vinyl noise. And I actually added a texture, which is kids playing in a playground, so it's like a background chatter. So in combination, it sounds like this. After I added that texture, I wanted to start adding some drums in. I think something really important to do when it comes to drums is to make sure that you have that sort of element that's adding the movement, right? So like the kick and the snare, they add that like sort of head bop, the foundation of the groove. But realistically, inside a track, that tends to sound too empty depending on the context. And in this case, it definitely did. So to start creating a little bit more movement, I added the sleigh bells. Of course, because it's a Christmas track, you have to have sleigh bells. I then added these two other elements that really help with the movement of the groove. Now going on to the pre-chorus, I switched up the chord progression, so it sounds like this now. I did feel like that when this part of the vocal came, the chord progression definitely needed to switch up to sort of complement it better. So I did that, and then I also added Rhodes, because I feel like Rhodes are such a Christmassy sort of sound. And then I also added a bass to sort of introduce a little bit more power into the pre-chorus. Another thing that I added that I forgot to show you guys is this thing that I called Atmos Cry. It sounds like this. And again, going back to what I was saying earlier, I love dreamy, vibey, wavy, whatever you want to call it, style, sounds, and music. And I really thought it'd be cool to sort of combine that modern, dry, simplistic pop sound, but also incorporate my own sound. Because I am producing it, I want to incorporate some of my own style and sounds and stuff like that. We have the noise and the textures kind of playing throughout the whole entire track. I added this riser to help transition into the hook. I also added a crash transition to help with the transition, and then also give the hook a little bit more impact and energy. In the pre-chorus, I also added two new elements in the drum section. I added the shakers and a hand clap. So moving on to the hook, which tends to be the most anticipated or most important part of the song, it was actually a little bit of a challenge because Allisa killed this performance. It was so good, and I wanted to make sure that the production was powerful so that it helped like elevate her and complement her, but not over powerful and like overtake her and sort of just make it too chaotic. You really want that vocal to shine. So I definitely wanted to add more synths for the hook section just to give it a little bit more power, and immediately I thought of those staccato pianos, because that's just Christmas. Like when I hear this, like that's just Christmas times. I layered that with some strings as well, trying to keep as much organic instruments as I can. I have that Atmos Cry, give that Ryos spaciousness. Don't mind, it's being sidechained by a trigger for the kick, so don't mind that it sounds a little like uneven. It's like ducking. Speaking of that, I actually added an 808 because what's 2019? 2019 is the year of the 808, so I wanted to have that modern feel, so I did choose to use an 808 here. And as far as processing goes, I have a decapitator. Now this is actually super important because we could actually take off the processing. And this is actually a pretty harmonic 808. It's from Serum. But you know what? Like I wanted to really make it audible on phone speakers and, TVs and stuff like that. So I did add this distortion and quite a bit of it. And then that combined with the R bass, some sidechain compression for the kick, and some EQing resulted in this. For the hook drums, I replaced the kick sound that I used in the break as well as the snares that I used in the break, and they sound like this. Let's break down the snare a little bit because there's actually 4 or 5 elements sort of contributing to this. So we have this pre-sound that's like the tiniest click that plays right before the snare actually hits to give it a little bit more depth. We have the main snare sound, or not the main, but like the punch sound, which is a sort of rim shot. And then we have the main snare. And then this pre and the Foley sound. Then we also have a snare reverse, which kind of gives it that like suck-in effect. The reasoning for all that is it just sounds a lot cooler than this. That just sounds boring in my opinion. So having these sort of small details really adds a lot. The sleigh bells continue from the break, although what I did is I increased the rhythm, so instead of it being, now it's this. Because the hook tends to be the most energetic part of the song, and something simple like speeding up the rhythm of the sleigh bells really helped add that energy. I kept the lo-fi hats from the break as well, and I just made them a little bit louder. But the two new drum elements that I added for the hook are really cool sounds. And then I added some real hi-hats as well. I also forgot to mention that kind of throughout the track, I have a gyro, I don't know how to pronounce it properly, but I have that gyro instrument. It's a percussion instrument as well as a chime. It's bounced down into audio because it was from Contact, but it sounds like this. The chime really helps in adding that sort of like Christmas magic, I feel. I also have these drum fills that play throughout the track. So altogether, the drums sound like this. The second half of the song is pretty much the same as the first half. The only difference is I added this bass guitar. Now after the second hook, I added this sort of vibey, weird interlude sort of section that we actually really love. We were joking around and saying that it's a Christmas song, but it's a Christmas song that could also give you like a stank face, because when it goes into this part here, I love that part. I already mentioned it, but I'm a big sucker for that sort of vibey, spacious sort of sound. So anyway, let's go over it. So I have the guitar and the analog chords that kind of play out through the whole song. I do change the chord progression though, so it sounds like this. And then I add the vibe piano. I also added this sound that I called Ghost. And then I have the same bass from before. And then altogether that section sounds like this. Everything you guys have heard up until this point was all in the production process of this song. I also did mix, master, and record it as well. So I figured I'll bring you guys into the final project, the project that you guys hear on Spotify and stuff. And I'll just kind of show you guys around a little bit, solo some elements so that you can hear them in their final form. And I'll give you guys a master chain. Why not?
In 21 Christmases, I've never wanted anything more. You're sweeter than snowfall. I've never wanted anything more. And my wish remains the same as years before. You're all I want this Christmas. You're all I'm wishing for.
And then for the master chain, you guys, let me also preface this. The master really isn't that important. I talked about this in how to make your drop sound more professional video, but I find that a lot of the professional sound tends to come from everything in the production phase, right? I do think that mastering is important. It will add that like 5-10% boost, whatever, maybe even like 1% depending on. But yeah, anyway, what I have on here, I do have a linear phase EQ rolling off the very low end. I have the glue compressor with my sort of standard settings that I typically use. An imager just to make the track a little bit more wide, and a limiter to try to sort of tame everything. And that's about it, guys. Fairly simple, but nonetheless effective. And I'm really, really happy and proud of how this song came out. So I hope you guys enjoyed this walkthrough of 21 Christmases by Allisa Rose. Go stream it everywhere if you haven't already. I'll have it linked down below. If you guys enjoyed this video, please be sure to hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, and hit that notification bell because I am uploading every week. If you guys have any requests, suggestions, or things you'd like to see from me, feel free to leave that in the comment section down below. I want to wish you guys a very happy holiday. I hope you enjoy it. Spend some good time with your friends and family. But other than that, that'll be all for me today. So I hope you guys have a great rest of your day, and I'll catch you guys next time. Peace!